Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Move podcast. Brought to you today by our old friends and George's favorite, Manscaped. Look at the shirt he's wearing. I mean, if the man is not just completely bought in, not just shaving his stuff, now he's saving balls. George, I mean, we always knew you were just such a sweet guy, but you've gone over and above. They're the global leaders in men's below-the-waist grooming. They offer precision engineered tools for your family jewels, and now is offering products for your not-so-private parts. They have an exclusive offer for our audience. Use the code THEMOVE, all one word, THEMOVE, to get 20% off plus free shipping at manscaped.com. Join the movement and the other 4 million men who trust Manscaped. George being just one of the 4 million. By the way, April is National Testicular Cancer Awareness Month. These guys lean in hard there. So let's help them so they can help others. Again, that's manscaped.com by code THEMOVE. I'm joined, of course, by Mr. George Hincapie. This is a race he knows like the back of his hand. We had to do it a day late because George was organizing his sock drawer and flying jizzies around.
Thanks for waiting for me, guys. I'm happy to be here.
By the way, I had some travel snafus myself we can get into. Johan Brunel over there in Europe, quite the backdrop. I love the fact that your photo you have behind you actually proves that Team Education First was actually in the race, because I do see one of the riders present.
Yeah, there they are.
Yep.
At the end of the bunch.
Yep. And JB Hager. But yeah, so a shit show getting back from Hawaii. Go show up last night or yesterday, catch, all of a sudden the mechanics have like the cowlings of the engine open. I'm like, okay, for starters, that's not good. Number two, we pretty much take off and we're over water the entire time. I'm like, I don't really know that this is a good idea. Ended up canceling the flight. I literally walked in the house 30 minutes ago, had to take the red eye, but we made it.
I'm dying to know right out of the gate. George, is this your first time to view Flanders as a spectator?
No, actually, I've gone 3 or 4 times. I haven't gone since COVID hit, but I went in 2016 and then once again in 18, I believe, and then again this year. So yeah, just completely different experience. You're able to really appreciate the ambiance it's unlike any other race you see. It's really cool. It's great to be there.
It is. I mean, that Wouter, the guy who bought the race a few years ago, is, and I think we've talked about him before. He's one of these. He's sort of a new thinker when it comes to professional cycling. He took a very, very traditional race with a traditional route, and just said, "No, we're going to do it different," and really made it special for the spectators. George, you were standing there, so you probably saw the vibe. And of course,
just elaborate on that, Lance. A lot of he got some criticism early on because he took away the historic finale of the Tour of Flanders, which is the Muur of the Gerardsbergen, the Bosberg, and the run into town. And he made it, 3 times up the Quermont. So what he did was, in a sense, he created a stadium, which is the one thing that cycling's missing. And you walk into that Quermont area, and all it is these luxurious tents with food and wine and champagne. It is a legitimate stadium experience. And, they got the overhead cameras. And like I mentioned before, it's unlike anything you see in cycling. And he's done an incredible job. Of course, changed the course around, which I still think is as hard as ever and as exciting as ever. But now you have a stadium setting so people can watch it and enjoy the race that way.
And based on those ingredients, you felt right at home. You didn't mention caviar.
Yeah, but the luxurious tents, that's where George, we would find George there, right?
George, when you see the peloton go by, or it's not, or small groups, and more so in Flanders, do you think, oh God, I missed that? Or do you think, thank God I'm not out there?
Not for a second. And you know what? I got to ride the course the day before, or a lot of the course, not the whole thing, obviously, but the last 145K. And just really reminded me what makes this race so special. I mean, you got the big roads to small roads, the cobblestones. You got what we always call, and Lance, I'm sure you remember, Johan, you grew up with it, so it probably didn't bother you as much. That Death Valley crack in the middle of the road where, I still wake up with nightmares of that little crack. It's about an inch wide. And in a group of 200 guys, somehow you always get sucked into this little crack. And if you're not paying attention, you're going down. Right. And this is happening all throughout the 270 kilometers of Flanders, amongst, 1,000 other things going on. But there's just so many obstacles in that race that it's just insane.
Yeah, we used to call that thing the Widowmaker.
Yep.
George, before we start to talk about the actual race, maybe you can share a little bit of, you did the course the day before. I don't know how many people were on the road, like 15,000 people, I think. How does that feel? Basically, there's so many people on that road that you have to navigate all the climbs, I guess, depending on, unless you start at 7 a.m. But how did that feel? We saw the videos that you took. Great performance riding those cobbled climbs one-handed. But how did that feel?
It was cool. You see, what's really interesting, and not to knock on any of our American riders that ride the Grand Flanders, the bike handling skills of the recreational riders in Europe and in Belgium is insane, because these roads are so technical, and there's thousands, like you said, 15,000 people on the course, and going from bike pass, there's guys passing you all day long, or you're passing people. I didn't see one crash. People are super safe, but you get to these climbs where you get like the Koppenberg, for instance, and you run into just walls of people. Some are walking up, some are just barely making it up, but it's cool because you get to experience, everybody feels the same going up these things, like how difficult it is, and be able to witness the approaches of these climbs, which is, as we remember, some of the hardest part of cycling. It's not just the climb. It's like before the Koppenberg, for instance, that if you're not in the first 20 guys, you may never see the front again. Your race could be over with 60, 70 miles or 40 miles to go. So it was helpful for me to remind myself how technical and physically difficult that course is.
Mm-hmm. Which makes, and we're going to talk about the race, but which is what makes, I think, Pogačar's performance, although, I think he left disappointed. Probably a lot of people felt disappointed or thought he played it wrong. But think about that. Here's a guy who is who he is, to jump into that race. The best guys have done it 10 times. They know it like it's their backyard. It makes a huge, I never could. I don't know how many, I probably did it 5 or 6 times. I still felt like I was on Mars every time I went. So for him to be at the tip of the spear, it's awfully, awfully impressive in my opinion. But before we get into it, because I think the big story is as we talked about in Milan San Remo, Mathieu van der Poel. I don't know where the guy was or what he was doing or who fixed his back. Some bitch deserves a Nobel Prize. The kid is back, right? Today's show also brought to you by Athletic Greens. This is something I started taking months and months and months ago. I wanted better gut health, better energy. Not great eating my vegetables. So I started hammering the Athletic Greens on a daily basis. So what is it? All right. Well, with one delicious scoop of Athletic Greens, you're absorbing 75 high quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens. Help you start your day right, all for less than $3 a day. Let's make it easy. Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/themove. Clearly, I just got off a plane. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/themove. Take ownership of your health. What more can we say? Now Van der Poel has won his second Tour of Flanders. Johan, is the record? A few guys have won it. Three record is 3.
I think it's 3. I think it's 3. I know Mathieu won it 3 times. Bonen won it 3 times. Cancellara won it 3 times. Eddy Merckx only 2 times, I think. Van der Poel. Listen, Van der Poel did the Tour of Flanders 4 times. His first participation, he was 4th, which was the year that he started to take road cycling seriously. And I think we can all remember that big crash he had on the downhill of the new Quaremont, going to the Quaremont. Race was over. He was on the ground for a long time, finished fourth. And then he has a first, a second, and a first. No, it's impressive. But as you say, Lance, I mean, I think the most impressive about Van der Poel is, we all know already how good he is, the talent he has. But to be back at the highest level after, a very difficult start of the season, not being able to train, not being able to ride his bike. And, in one of the former episodes we had, I told you guys that he was for 5 to 6 weeks in an altitude hotel in Spain. I guess the prices of the rooms have gone up since Mathieu van der Poel's result in Milan-San Remo, and especially yesterday in Flanders. But from the data we've seen, and Van der Poel is uploading every single training ride he has done straight away after training, and from the results and the data we've seen, we all knew that he was in great shape. He just missed a little bit of rhythm, but I think after Milan-San Remo, we knew he was back. He's to go back a little bit. It seems it's already 2 or 3, almost 3 weeks ago. But he started Milan-San Remo, then he went to Coppi Bartali, which is a stage race in Italy. He took it as training, but from the information I have from within the race, a guy who was there in the team cars, he said he won a stage, but the way he won that stage was incredible. There was a breakaway of 5 riders, and so he attacked on a downhill, took 1 minute on the peloton. The team car went to him. He said, "Yeah, you're 1 minute ahead." So he decided, okay, I may as well continue now. So he went up to the breakaway, caught the 5 guys, then dropped them one by one, and stayed. It was like 100 kilometers from the finish, and they caught him with 5 kilometers to go, the bunch, and then he still wins the bunch sprint, producing close to 1,600 watts in the sprint. Stop, then takes the next 2 stages as training, and then goes to the next semi-classic, through Flanders in Waregem, wins that, saying, okay, I was not the strongest guy in the race, but he won. But I hope I'll be recovered. I hope I'll be recovered for Sunday. He was definitely recovered. So,
and he attacked Johan. I think he attacked with 100K to go in Dwars doors. I rode with one of the Astana guys and just said,
80K.
80K to go.
80K to go. Yeah.
Classic.
Did the Astana guy ask you to borrow any money since they're not getting paid?
He did not. Actually, it was a very nice ride we did
together. Who was it? Who was the guy?
Leonardo Basso, really nice kid.
Oh, okay. Okay.
He was on Ineos.
He was on Ineos and Sky before. Yeah.
I don't know how he ended up doing on Sunday, but he was a very nice kid.
Well, they only had 2 finishers, so
no,
I don't think he was one of them.
Do you guys? They got to go back to those. Remember they had that little period where they decided, when unfortunately I was on a team from Kazakhstan for a couple of years or a year, and they stopped paying us.
Yeah.
And Johan says, shit, what are we going to do? And I said, well, God dang, we can't change the jersey. We can't wear white jerseys, although I wanted to. I was like, what if we and there was one of their sponsors that paid, the gas company, and of course Trek paid. But, and so I said, what if we just did super faded out jerseys?
In the Giro.
In the Giro, and barely see their logos. And Giordano, God bless them, man, they had them made overnight. And that thing showed up and I was like, I am a fucking genius. Guess what? They started paying pretty fast.
Yeah. A week later, the salaries were paid. I remember that. Yeah.
I still have that jersey laying around the house somewhere. I'll find it and post it up on socials. You guys, if you don't remember it, you'll be able to see it. You'll get a kick out of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I still remember you calling me sometime in, I don't know when it was, August, September. And you're like, Gee, I'm coming back. I'm going to race for Astana. Can you come race with me on Astana? I go, Astana? Are you fucking kidding me? Hell no. It was one of the only times in my career where I said, you're crazy. I'm not racing for Astana.
Well, you know what, George, you were right.
Well, listen, and credit to Lance. The only reason why he was on Astana because I was there.
That's true.
and for the people, I mean, we're getting off track a little bit, but what a lot of people also don't know is that Lance was not getting paid $1 by the team. He raced for free that year. So,
and to all you kids at home, also a bad idea. Don't ever do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I think Lance, in general, a part of racing on Astana where you kind of know you're not going to get paid. I think in general, comebacks are never a good idea.
Okay. All right, you listen, you know what? We're getting off subject. This is not to remind Lance what an idiot he was in 2008. Okay. This show's not about that. This show's about the 2022 Tour of Flanders. But yeah. Let's stop talking about me. But
hey, I'd love to get you guys' thoughts on Pogačar and tactics. It looked to me like he got close to cracking Van der Poel early on a couple climbs, not early, late in the race, but on a couple climbs way before the finish. Obviously, that was a tactic he had. Do you think he got close to actually cracking?
Well, I mean, there's only one person that can answer that better, and that's Van der Poel. And he's gone on the record and said he was about to just sit up, that he could limit. He was on the limit. And we've all been there where you're like, all right, if they keep this up, I'm done. Right. I just have to sit up and hope the race shapes itself another way. But he admitted those two times he was fully maxed and about to get dropped.
Yeah, I looked on the TV that on the Pottersburg, he was hanging on for dear life. Man, Pogačar was just drilling it.
Yeah, I think the proof that he was really on the limit was, that the last time on the Paterberg, when the moment we see he loses a few meters, it was actually more. It was not so much because Pogačar was going a little bit faster, but the fact that Mathieu van der Poel had to go and look for that 3 centimeters of concrete on the side, that's not a good sign. That's basically you're looking for every single little detail of advantage. And that was actually what almost brought him out of balance and lost the wheel. But, I still think that, having Van der Poel on the limit and dropping him in the final of the Tour of Flanders, that's still one step further to drop him. I mean, he was definitely on the limit. I think that, the most of the climbs we saw in the final, whether it was the Taaienberg or the Koppenberg or especially the Quaremont and the last time of the Patersberg, Pogačar was leading and imposing his rhythm on Van der Poel. But, getting dropped, I think it would have taken a little bit more than that. And, from the moment they got on the Patersberg, to me, it was clear that it was going to be very difficult to beat Van der Poel. Pogačar would not beat Van der Poel. And if you look at the sprint, JB, and I guess that's where you want to get in terms of tactics. Mm-hmm. I don't really know what Pogačar could have done differently. In my opinion, the longer he waited the sprint, the more advantage for Van der Poel, because Van der Poel is more explosive.
Right.
Pogačar had to drop him on the climbs. Otherwise, I don't think he had any chance, because a champion, and especially with the mental hunger of Van der Poel in the Tour of Flanders, these guys have like another gear. There was, Van der Poel has said, okay, Van Aert is not here. This is my race. Nobody's beating me.
Johan, let's go back to what you said on the Pottersburg. As a rider, the only time you're going in that little 3-inch concrete section is when you're looking for every piece you're in survival mode. You're like, I'm so exhausted right now. I need to get every piece of smooth pavement I can, because let's be honest, that is the most riskiest place to be. Not only because of the fans that are right next to you, you can clip a bar very easily, but also that little lip in between the concrete and the cobblestones. I mean, that is a very easy way to get a flat tire. I flatted 2 times by doing that the day before. It's not where you want to be, but he was in survival mode, and of course it paid off for him, but it was a very risky move.
No, it was. I mean, the fact that he goes looking for that. I mean, Van der Poel is also so handy on a bike. He's one of the few guys who can actually do that. But it was clear. I mean, not just from that, George, the body language of Van der Poel, the way he was working the bike on all those climbs, you didn't have to see the faces to see that he was 100% and he had to give it all to follow Pogačar. I mean, what Pogačar has done in the Tour of Flanders, whatever the result, I think it's impressive. Once again, a guy like that breaks every single traditional rule of cycling. If he would have won the Tour of Flanders, and he was in a position to win, it would have been the first rider in 40 years who wins the Tour of Flanders at his first participation. And it would be only the third guy. Only two Tour de France champions have won also the Tour of Flanders. Wow. One of them is Eddy Merckx, and the other one was Louison Bobet from way before. So we all know this is a different sport, these classics, right, than normal cycling. It's not a different kind of cycling. It's a different sport. It's a war. It's and the fact, okay, they do recon the course, but it does not compare towards having raced it a few times, and the fact that he was so comfortable, so smooth on these climbs was, I was speechless to see that.
No, that's what I was saying at the top of the show, to just jump in there. It's wildly impressive. I mean, the kid, come on, we talk about him all the time. I don't see any end in sight for him. I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah, it was funny to see today. He posted in his Instagram post. I think he's trying to play a little bit with his rivals. So he posted a picture of him. I think it's Arenberg. So he's on the cobbles. He's on the cobbles of Paris-Roubaix, but obviously he's not going to do Paris-Roubaix. He's there to recon the Tour de France cobbles. But who knows? I mean, put him in Paris-Roubaix, and the guy can ride a bike. That is a really bad idea. He won't do that. He won't do it. I know. I might have to intervene there. That's not a good idea. Today's show also brought to you by a new partner of ours, HVMN. Well, here's what's cool about these guys and gals. If you want to know what these guys and gals are using in the pro pelotons, it's 60% of the teams in the Tour de France are using HVMN ketones. We talked a lot about ketones on the show before. It is nature's natural fuel source. Really has been a game changer, and it is very, very present in the peloton and very beneficial. Not just in cycling. They just got a $6 million contract from SOCOM, which I love this angle. So SOCOM is the United States Special Operations Command. So when we're out putting our men and women on the front line, and they're pushing themselves, and truly some of the highest performing athletes in the world, they're using HVMN. 2% increase in athletes' endurance, 15% increase in mean power output after recovery. I've been playing around with it. Their new ketone IQ is incredible. It takes a little bit of dialing in, full transparency, but game changer. And you can get into more and more with it. And when you start learning what it means to be in a state of ketosis, but a lot going on there. And again, something we've recognized on this show, probably before anybody else dared to talk about it. HVMN changed the game. For our listeners, go to hvmn.com/ketone, and the promo code is the move for 10% off. That's hvmn.com/ketone. Also today, Bird Dogs, new partner of ours. I just got back from Hawaii. Bird Dogs sent me a bunch of swag. I was there for spring break. I was rocking the shorts and rocking the pants. It was like, yo, what are those? And I was like, this is my new Bird Dogs. They're like, oh, I've been seeing that. You just kind of got to see it to believe. Had it on the golf course, had it on the beach, had it just walking around, my flip-flops on. Super stylish, super, super comfortable. George, you're the damn fashionista. Have you got Bird Dog stuff yet?
I have. They're super versatile. The pants,
amazing.
The shorts. I mean, you can wear them out dressed up or wear them for travel. I mean, there's just so many different uses for all their items that I just love it.
Were they comfortable on that jizzy? They got you over there and back?
They're very comfortable. That's for sure. Wherever you have them on.
Head on over to birddogs.com. The promo code is THEMOVE. Get into the action. birddogs.com. Promo code THEMOVE. What else, Johan?
Yeah, I'd love.
JB,
I'd love for you guys to talk more about Pogačar and tactics, because I think for the first time I can recall, we saw him emotional and frustrated. Like we've never seen that, and we're used to seeing him, in the Grand Tours where he has 3 weeks to chip away at everybody, put 30 seconds here, a minute there. He's frustrated with the tactics, and as Johan said, this is a different sport. Can you elaborate a little bit on that, as especially Lance as a Grand Tour GC guy, getting in and mixing it up with this kind of racing?
I mean, I did not have that experience look, we've seen it happen now twice with him, right? Milan-San Remo. There, I think he did make some tactical blunders. This one, you didn't have much choice. Van der Poel was most likely going to win anyways. I had those experiences in Liège-Bastogne-Liège and Amstel Gold Race. Look, these are races that, they are career makers. You win one, even if you've won a Grand Tour, it's just to win a classic. You're like, man, you just can't imagine what that means for your lifetime's resume. So, but when the race is over, the race is over. There's not a time trial tomorrow. There's not a mountain stage in 3 days. There's no consolation in leaving and saying, well, I didn't win today. You could say it with big stages, big epic stages in the Tour. I know I felt awfully disappointed the 2 times I was second on Ventoux, but you're still in the jersey, you have other opportunities, and you're still going to win. Man, here's 2 in a row back to back where if things go a little bit differently, he could have won both of those races. And there's no guarantee that next year's you're on that doorstep or the year after. You look at it and you're like, did I just miss my one opportunity? I mean, I can imagine he's super frustrated.
Yeah, not only that, this guy's a natural born killer. You saw he did his first Tour of Flanders. He had the confidence coming in. I think he even said in the press, like, I'm going to unleash the fury the last 50 kilometers of this race. So for a Tour de France winner to say that, come into her first time at Tour of Flanders, he's just got this unbelievable, confidence in his biking skills and his handling and his team. And you saw it from the beginning of the race. He had a crash, but didn't really faze him. Put a couple guys in the front to start doing work early on. He was there to win the race, put himself in the perfect position, did everything absolutely right, except the last 200 meters. He didn't have the legs. I don't think anything could have happened differently tactically. Van der Poel was just going to beat him in that sprint, but everything else he did it to absolute perfection.
Yeah. And I think, George, also that, he is, and, he's still only 23 and he is a rookie in these kind of races. And compared to Van der Poel, who is already an experienced rider in these races, Van der Poel really did the perfect tactics. And not talking too much about the sprint, but if you look at the second time up the Quaremont, when Pogačar accelerates, comes from behind, passes everybody, Asgreen made a tactical mistake there by trying to follow him, blew up his whole race. And Van der Poel just kept it cool. He knew it was still 55 kilometers to go, way too far, way too early. Although, with a guy like Pogačar, you never know. But Van der Poel kept his cool, and he knew he could come back on the big road between the Quaremont and the Patersberg. And I think that was definitely, I think the disappointment of Pogačar after the finish, which he actually confirmed, was basically with himself. Okay, you're in this position. It's the first time you do the Tour of Flanders. You're there with, arguably one of the top 2 best classic specialists in the world, Van der Poel, and you're guaranteed to be second, if not first. There you see also the champions mentality of Pogačar. He was not going to be happy with second. He wanted to win, and he was he was prepared to lose the first or the second place by pushing Van der Poel and not taking that last pull and waiting. It was a mistake, but I think that initially you could say, he was disappointed and he was protesting with Van Baarle, who got second, and because he changed his trajectory a little bit, but he was disappointed with himself, I think. But it's, as you say, Lance, maybe an opportunity like this never comes back, because there's always situations in these kind of races that you don't know if they're going to repeat themselves. Although with a guy like Pogačar, I think he's going to get more opportunities.
Johan, I got to disagree. I got to disagree slightly. I don't know if it was as a matter of Van der Poel keeping his cool there and the second time up the Quermont. I actually think it was just a circumstance of the race where perhaps he didn't come in the best position. Ended up ultimately being better for him because there was a couple guys in between Pogačar and him. He got some help coming back. But let's be frank there. At the end of that race coming into the Quermont, really nobody had a team anymore. Quickstep still had guys, which they didn't really have the head guy, but Van der Poel had a good team. He didn't have a great team. Pogačar had a good team. He didn't have a great team. So at that point, I think it was kind of mano in terms of position, in which we know that downhill to the Quermont is the scariest, most technical downhill in all of cycling in terms of positioning. So anything can happen on that one. I think the worst. I think perhaps he could have been a bit too far back, ended up not panicking, but I don't necessarily think that was part of the plan. It ended up being
I think it is, George. I think it is. He was not in a great position, but in that second last time of the Quermont isn't necessarily that necessary to be fighting for that position, because as you say, it all comes down to the last time of the Quermont and the last time of the Paardenberg. But if you look at the data of Mathieu van der Poel's ride, the second last time up the Quermont, not the last time where he had trouble following Pogačar, but the second last time, he produced his 5-minute peak of the race.
That's my point. That's exactly my point.
So he was there. He could probably have panicked and go, but he said, okay, this is good enough. I have time to come back. So that's what I say. I think he made a tactical decision there that say, okay, I'm close to my limit. I'm not going to panic, and I'm going to wait until the race comes back together. So I think we agree. I think you misunderstood me. Okay. Yeah.
There might have been an obstacle in the way between you two guys, because I think you're both singing from the same hymn book.
A language obstacle.
I know the second time up the Quermont, Pogačar to me looked like he was fingers in the nose, and I was like, oh shit, Van der Poel is kind of far back here, and he's like, you can see that he was going for it. I mean, obviously Pogačar was too, but he was making the selection as opposed to catching back up.
But on the other hand, you could also say, George, didn't Pogačar burn one match too much that second time up the Quermont, because it was not really necessary for him to do that?
You could absolutely say that. Yes. Yeah. Perhaps he could have ridden away there at the last lap.
Hey guys, tell me from my experience watching Flanders, and it was dry conditions, luckily, but is it fairly unusual and uncharacteristic of Flanders to have 35 guys within a minute 11? I mean, there were 40 guys within a minute 18. Like he didn't, usually it's a lot more strength. My point is, it seems like there's a lot of guys, a lot more talent within striking distance.
Oh yeah. Well, the depth of the field is totally different than every few years. With all due respect to Eddie Merckx, I mean, Eddie raced against 10 guys, right? We raced against 50 guys. They're racing against 100 plus guys now. I mean, everybody's serious. This idea, I'm a domestique and I'm going to, do my job and pull over. No, all these guys want to be fit. They all want to be competitive. They're all very, very serious. So that's just going to continue.
Well, JB, you got to remember, this isn't a mountain stage. This is a classic. They go full gas just to get to the climb, full gas up the climb, and then you have the in-between stuff before the next climb. So once you have a gap, you don't necessarily need a 3-minute gap. You just want to stay ahead of the guys behind you. So they're just, at that point, once they establish a gap, they're more of just thinking, okay, I'm thinking about this next climb coming up, and what my tactics is going to be. I'm not thinking about getting 4 minutes on the next group behind me. It's just all about keeping enough gap to stay away from the guys behind you.
Hey, one thing I want, because we just mentioned Quick Step, and we talked about them last week, and and I think we said, they may not be pulling the fire alarm, but they have the hand on it. I think somebody might be pulling it at this point. Johan, you can speak to this better as a Belgian and just knowing that program as well as you do. This is their Super Bowl, right? This and Roubaix. And you got to go down the list here. I'm going down it right now. Casper Asgreen, the best finisher from the Wolfpack Quick Step, 23rd place. But so that's on it. I know Lefebvre must just be livid.
Well, the thing is, Lance, it's not the first time. It's weeks in a row.
I understand. But this is, you could say, okay, Tirreno and, all these other races, whatever race, this is their Super Bowl. But at the same time, if you're Lefebvre reflecting upon your Super Bowl, you've got, 3 Groupama FDJs in the top 15. You've got 3 Bahrain victorious guys. Like, you have depths of other teams that you never would have thought to have seen. Meanwhile, you are the New England Patriots of Belgium, and your best dude is 23rd. Like, he must be so pissed.
He's you know what, Lance? I did before the show, 30 minutes before we started, I did my homework and I spoke with the alpha wolf of the Wolfpack, with Mr. Lefebvre, to ask him his opinion. So he's obviously disappointed. He's not angry because there's certain things that you can't control. And in my opinion, there's also, this doesn't come from him, this is my opinion. If you are this dominant force, things start to even out at some point. And I think they're at this level now that all of a sudden, there's other teams who have caught up. Same thing happened when we were racing. Same thing happened with Sky when they were so dominant. And I think this is happening with Quickstep right now. On top of that, he told me, and I have heard this already, they had tremendous amount of illnesses. Apparently, the virus that's going on, this flu-like virus, which is not COVID, riders suffer a lot more from it, from the consequences, than actually COVID. And then another thing that I personally think also, Patrick doesn't seem to think that, but I think from a distance, one thing that may have changed the dynamics a little bit in that team is, let's not forget, they have another type of riders, Alaphilippe and Evenepoel mainly. And they have, in my opinion, focused and invested in building the circle around young Remco Evenepoel to strengthen that part, whereas they haven't really brought any new talent in. And their best rider, if you look back, Asgreen is the guy who came to replace Niki Terpstra. Okay, Niki Terpstra was, he won Flanders and he won Roubaix, but he was hardly seen as a dominator. He was winning because he took advantage of the strength of the team. And so they focused on Evenepoel and they've strengthened the team there. So I think they're paying the consequences a little bit of that also. Of course he's disappointed. But at the other hand, I kept saying they have won already 17 races this year. Today, Evenepoel was second, losing to Primož Roglič in the time trial in the Tour of the Basque Country. Roglič apparently is going to keep the Slovenian dominance going. Unbelievable. Roglič, 11 time trials he did in Spain in his career, and he won all 11. 11 out of 11. Boy. Yeah. So anyway, back to the Tour of Flanders and the Koenig, the Quick Step, sorry. The Koenig is now with another team. But yeah, I think we should make the balance of, listen, it's already a disappointment. They're cobbled classics, period. But let's not forget, there's Paris-Roubaix still, not next week, but 2 weeks. So different. I think we should make the balance after that race. That's the race they have dominated the most in their history. I think it's easier to win than Tour of Flanders for them. But it's obviously something that, you have to be blind to not see that Quickstep is not anymore the dominant force that they were. And I think they're not going to be anymore the leveling of the performances of teams and riders is so broad now that it's the same thing. They're racing against, a lot more rivals that are super prepared, have experience, and are super motivated.
Johan, speaking of teams, I think we would be remiss not to mention the Frosinone and Baharan. They both had two guys there in the final each. Laurent Madouas's son, who Lance and I were teammates with on Motorola.
Yeah.
A long time ago, gets third place in the Tour of Flanders after, finished 14th in 2020, 39th in 21, and then all of a sudden he's third place amongst the best in the world. Super
George, also, one thing that I want to point out about what's his name, Valentin Madouas. Yeah. He was the third strongest on the Koppenberg. Yeah. That's the where you really see the strengths so deep in the race. It was Van der Poel, Pogačar, and Madouas. It's great to see a young French guy up there. And then, also Van Baarle, Dylan Van Baarle, a domestique who knows how to anticipate. I think this is something, the guys who are not super leaders, knowing how to anticipate, going away with this other guy from Bahrain, Fred Wright, I guess. I didn't even know the rider that well. But he was up there. That's, as you said, in between the hills and the cobbles to anticipate and get a little bit of headway when the big guns start to go for it. That's super important too.
Absolutely. I did like one last thing I'll point out in terms of the teams is Baharan did a little something different this year. Every year, all the teams, we all stay at the same hotel at the classics, and you end up sometimes staying up there for up to a month, 3 weeks to 4 weeks. And you know how it is staying in a hotel. It's just very hard to control. I liked what they did this year. They had some of their staff at the same hotel we were at, but then they VRBO'd a house for all of their riders and their essential staff, which to me is pretty awesome to think of. Just be a much better setting to be somewhere for a long period where you actually kind of feel much more like a home setting.
Better be a big house.
It was a big house.
I mean, this isn't like, you have 4 buddies going on a golf trip. I mean, it better be a big ass house, but it is a good idea. Just keep it all contained.
And it was nice to see more women's coverage. And if you've been listening to the show, we have made a commitment to coverage more of women's cycling. And we're going to see a lot, especially during the tour. We're going to go big, but they've finished after the men for the first time. I think previously they were finishing early. And I even heard him say on commentary that previously the cameramen were just practicing shots on the women when they would go before and not even shooting it. So a big step forward for women's coverage in cycling.
No doubt.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was the first. I mean, when I went to see the race 3 years ago, and I remember the women's race passing the Quaremont in between the times that the professional the men's race passed. But I mean, it was a super exciting race in the final. A little bit the same. I mean, what you see in women's cycling at this level in the classics, it's you have Annemiek van Vleuten, who is the strongest rider of the whole peloton. Whenever it's with pure power, whether it's uphill or on cobbles, or she is super strong, but she has the disadvantage that it's basically the whole peloton against Van Vleuten. The tactics, in my opinion, in women's cycling are quite simple. You just have to try to follow Van Vleuten. If you're faster in the sprint, you'll beat her. And, what happens here is that you have this other force, which is SD Works, very strong team. They had 3 riders in the final. The Swiss champion, Reusser, I think is her name, or Reusser, or
Marlene Reusser.
Reusser, yeah. So she was ahead in a little breakaway, and then Lotte Kopecky, the Belgian champion, and Chantal Blaak, ex-world champion also. So it was these 3 riders against Van Vleuten. And at the end, Van Vleuten tried on the Quaremont and she tried on the Patersberg. And she got away with Kopecky. Kopecky confirmed what she had already done in Strade Bianche, because in Strade Bianche, Kopecky was the only rider who was able to stay with Annemiek van Vleuten and beat her in the uphill finish. So she was, obviously full of confidence. And to see that Kopecky was able to follow Van Vleuten, she was, at any moment I've seen her getting dropped, not even 1 inch. She was glued to her wheel. That was her only objective. She knew exactly when Van Vleuten was going to go, and she was there. And then at the end, just after the Paterberg, Chantal Blaak was not far behind, so she got back and basically drove the two others to the finish. And Kopecky was able to finish the sprint. She was very confident, although you should never be confident against Annemiek van Vleuten. After such a long race, it was, I think, 165 kilometers with all the clients, and for the first time also the Koppenberg for women. You can never be sure that you're going to win against Van Vleuten in the sprint after such a hard race. But I think, the form that Lotte Kopecky is in now, the confidence she had after Strade Bianche, to finish that race, being the Belgian champion. And I've seen the images of afterwards, when she was on the podium and the people went crazy.
Wow.
It was a great day yesterday for women's cycling. Really, really great publicity and very exciting race to watch.
And Johan, let's not forget, they saved the national Belgian holiday because we didn't have that many Belgian men. Did we have any in the top 10?
Okay. The Dutch guys are not going to like that, but Van der Poel is Belgian, no?
Well, he lives across the border, but he's not. No.
Dylan Tins was 6th.
He was, Van der Poel
Dylan, that's right. Dylan Tins.
Van der Poel is born in Belgium and lives in Belgium. He must like Belgium.
Yeah.
He just wears a little Dutch thing on his sleeve, but
Belgium claims him.
We claim him, of course, when he's good. But no.
And he pays Belgian taxes, so maybe you can call him half Belgian.
It was obviously. It would have been. We have not. Listen, we have not to finish off this podcast about Flanders. We have not talked about the absence of the big favorite, Wout Van Aert. No, who
right.
3 days before the race fell sick, finally turned out to be COVID positive and wasn't able to start. Van der Poel was one of the favorites together with him. I think if Van Aert is at the start without any difficulties, it would have been the 3 of them to the finish. I can't see how Van Aert would not be with those 2 guys.
Don't forget about Laporte. Once you got a favorite like Van Aert, the team is together a lot more than that. Perhaps Laporte wouldn't have been in such a dangerous situation. Then if you have Laporte there in the mix,
it would have been completely different. There you see the dominant team Jumbo-Visma without their leader. They were nowhere. They've tried. They've tried to be anticipating going moves. Laporte he had bad luck also. He was in a crash, had to try to come back for a long time, but he was still top 10, no, 8th or something.
Yeah, he was 8th.
Yeah. But Wout Van Aert, what a shame. Imagine Wout Van Aert is in the race, and I'm a big fan of Van der Poel, but imagine Van Aert wins. The 2 Belgian champions, men and women, win the Tour of Flanders. That would have been incredible.
Yeah.
But it's going to be for next time.
We'll see. Well, we'll be back next week for a slightly different series of classics here, but not for Paris-Roubaix, but for the Amstel Gold Race. That's a race that was also one of your favorites. Love that race.
Yeah. Super hard race. Super difficult race.
Very hard. And it's interesting. It's not one of the monuments, right? With 5 monuments of the classics. It's probably number 6, I guess. But it's an incredible race. So, and let me ask, because I don't know the answer to this: does Pogačar do that, or does he wait for Liège?
That's a good question. I don't know. But my guess would be that he doesn't do it.
Yeah.
To adapt to the different rhythm. And I think he's going to do Flèche and Liège. today the Tour of the Basque Country started, which is, a high level race and the preparing for, normally Amstel, Flèche and Liège. Now they're only going to do Flèche and Liège, I think. But yeah, I mean, from now on, we're seeing a different type of classics riders in the front with those races. It's a bit difficult to mentally adapt to it, right, George? Because normally you have Flanders and the next one is Roubaix, which is the same type of riders. And now the issue is going to be, how are the cobbled specialists going to adapt to this gap in between? Some of them are going to race Amstel, some of them are not going to race Amstel. It's changed around a little bit, so it's going to be interesting to see how that will translate in performances.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, when we were racing, it was Roubaix, right, like you said, Roubaix right after Flanders, and it's not easy, but it's you're kind of used to keeping your level in that mindset for those types of classics. And for me, always getting to Amstel Gold Race, at that point, I'd be losing, the edge, so to speak, and mentally very tired. So it'll be interesting to see who's able to keep their form with that 1 week in between Amstel and Roubaix.
All right.
Were you ever mentally tired, George?
Oh yeah.
Really?
That's one thing we never talk about, how hard mentally these races are. Flanders, Johan, when when in these races, like you said, they're a war, you always have to be paying attention. You're always risking crashing hard. So after these 3 weeks of races, I would always be done for about a month.
There's been in the past, there's always been guys who did, all the spring classics, like Harelbeke and Waregem, and then Gent-Wevelgem, Flanders and Roubaix. And I would have to really check who has been performing really well also in Amstel. It was usually like, an appendix, right, of the spring classics, but a different type of race. And I think, what you say is true. The mental tiredness, the mental fatigue after the cobbled classics, and then still having to do Amstel Gold Race, it would take a lot.
Which is a super nerve-wracking race.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's just bone dry, and if it's not, oh man.
Yeah.
That's PTSD. Yeah. All right. Well, we'll be back next week. And thanks for tuning in, everybody.